Welcome back to the show. Today, Kevin and Jason are joined by Ted Harrington, a #1 best-selling author, ethical hacker, and a leading voice in cybersecurity. Ted is the executive partner at ISE, where he helps companies, from startups to the Fortune 500, build better, more secure technology. He's the author of not just one, but 2 game-changing books, Hackable and his latest, Inner Hacker. He's also a TEDx speaker and a sought-after advisor who's helped redefine what it means to lead in the digital era. Ted has taken years of experience in the world of ethical hacking and distilled it down into easy-to-apply ideas and takeaways. Tonight's conversation should be a lot of fun. Let's get started.
Welcome, everyone, to the Cyber Distortion Podcast. We are on episode 8, season 4, and this episode is about unleashing your inner hacker. As always, we want to thank our sponsors, because without them, we could not do this great work in getting awesome content to all of you. So people like ThreatLocker, Alacronet, Fulcrum, and CypherNova, thank you for helping support us and helping us to support continuing to get good cybersecurity content out to the public and helping educate people however we can.
And great guests.
Yeah, and bringing us amazing guests. So tonight, Kevin, I'm excited again, and I have seen some of the work that this guy has done in his talks. And that made me extremely pumped up. And I'll tell you a little bit why before I get into the who. So this gentleman is a leader in ethical hackers. He's helped companies build better, more secure software. And not only that, he's an author, a keynote speaker, a consultant, an entrepreneur, and has his own podcast. He's the host of the podcast that is called Tech Done Different. And he specializes in penetration testing and secure software development. So, Kevin, we are bringing on tonight Ted Harrington. Welcome to the show, Ted. It's going to be an exciting one.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm excited because you've got some exciting news about your new book. We'll get into that. We're weeks. Well, at this point, I'm just calling it days.
Yeah.
Days away from Hacker Summer Camp.
Yeah.
We always get excited this time of year for conference season. Technically, conference season is year round, but this is the best part of conference seasons. We're super excited about that. And I know that you've got some things going on out there too. But let's get into the discussion. So tonight, the way we're going to handle this is more like a 2-on-1 type interview. You got a lot that you do. I got to doing my research on you, and I was like, we could focus this episode on ethical hacking. We could focus it on, just about anything in the area of hacking. But I wanted to focus it more on the things you're doing in the industry and your efforts to better the cybersecurity industry. So that's where we're going to go tonight. Okay.
Cool.
So I'm going to make it easy for you. First question, simple. So for those that are listening that don't know you, yeah, this is simple. This is real simple. Even for Jason, this one would be simple, which is really, really simple. So for those that don't know you, who is Ted Harrington?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name's Ted, and I'm in the fortunate position that I get to spend every day with hackers at our company called Independent Security Evaluators. And what we do is companies hire us to hack them. So we're the good guy hackers. And that just means I get to be around smart people doing meaningful work who are interested and interesting. And so we've published some pretty cool research along the way. I can definitely tell, some of those stories here today. But that's what really drives us, is to, do research, do consulting projects that help organizations build better, more secure systems. And as a byproduct of all that effort and exposure to what companies are struggling with, I've been able to write a few books, give a TED Talk, and participate in the hacker community with things like IoT Village, which we started about 10 years ago and run still to this day. So I'm excited to talk about any of those that would be of interest to you guys.
Wow. So you actually helped start IoT Village then, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
gotta
that
be
was
exciting.
The IoT. I am amused personally by the IoT Village origin story. So this was like around, I'm a little fuzzy on what year this particular moment happened. We published some research, I think it was around like 2013 maybe, that was looking at small office, home office routers, right? So the devices that all three of us are definitely using right now, that people watching this are definitely using. And we found like all kinds of problems, security flaws with these devices. And so we, went through responsible disclosure, published the research. It went really big, had a bunch of news coverage. We went all over the conference circuit talking about the research. And one of the things that came out of it that was really interesting, we started talking to DEF CON about this idea of like, can we somehow gamify this research? And I actually don't remember. This is lost to the matter of time. I don't remember if they approached us, we approached them. Somehow we're having this conversation, and we're like, well, what if we had we turn this into a hacking contest? And so we built this contest. The research was called So Hopelessly Broken. And we named the contest after that. At first I didn't like the name. I was like, it's like such a mouthful, but like, it's pretty clever. The Soho is like right in there. So Hopelessly Broken.
Yeah.
And so we go to put this conference or contest together. And you guys have obviously been to DEF CON, and it's similar with any conference in that like the main conference area is like, there's kind of like a middle like heartbeat of the event. And then there's like stuff like splinters outwards. And the farther away you get from the middle, the more like, marginal the stuff is.
Yeah.
So we were like, there's a main part. We're like down one hallway and down another hallway. You go down like this other hallway. And then eventually you get to like our room where you're like, am I still in the right place? So you get to our room. We're sharing it with some other the group organizing something else. And we're in the corner behind a table that is literally behind a trash can. So,
oh my God.
So like as people are like finishing their, whatever cheeseburger, and they're like throwing their trash and they're missing, and it's like landing in our contest. We're like, it's so humbling. And
wow.
So that was like it started from that, but that contest went really, really well. Like somehow, even despite the, far-flung nature of where we were, people caught wind of what we were doing, and a lot of people came, and there was a lot of excitement and enthusiasm about it. And as a result, we started talking to DEF CON for the next year about, like, what about a village focused on IoT? At that time, like around 2014-ish, 2014, 2015, there was IoT was starting to become understood as this, like, next emerging trend. Security should be considered in this. But at the time, even though DEF CON at that point was like 20 something editions old, like 24, 25 years old, there had only been 8 villages. And so the idea of like, well, what about a new village? That was like kind of a significant idea at the time.
Yeah.
Today there's tons of villages. There's like every year there's like 3 or 4 new villages, but at that time there was only 8. It's like lock picking. Lock picking is the only one I remember off the top of my head that was there, but there were like 8.
Social engineering,
hardware hacking,
social engineering, maybe cryptography village might have been there.
Maybe auto hacking.
Car hacking wasn't there yet.
Car hacking.
That came,
really?
That came after. Car hacking was like the immediate next year. And we're like, shouldn't that be IoT? Like, shouldn't we all like, come on, guys. No, I obviously am like super supportive of that idea. I'm just joking. So we go organize that first edition of IoT Village, and you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with the badge culture, but for anyone listening who might not be, let me explain badge culture at DEF CON, right? Everyone has these, like the badges are a thing, and the badges often, they're like a puzzle themselves, and sometimes they communicate with each other. One year it like played music, like last year it was almost like it wasn't exactly a Game Boy, but it was like some sort of game you could play, like literally a game. And then there's these like things you can add on to them. And so there are certain subcultures within the culture where it's like, if you have this extra badge or this special type of badge, you are like special. And then there's this like really high level badge that's for people who organize villages. And those are usually like yellow. And if you're wearing a yellow badge around, like people stop you, they want to take pictures with you. You're like kind of a celebrity. But then there's this like ultra elite badge that has no published standards to it. And it's called the black badge. And the black badge it's not literally the Hall of Fame, but it might as well be, because if you get a black badge, it's because you did something so awesome in the eyes of DEF CON that you get free admission for the rest of your life. And when you wear this literally black badge around, people stop you. And they want to, like, you're somebody who's awesome. And so people, they might not know who you are, but they want to stop you because it's kind of rare and it's cool to see them. And so that IoT Village, that first year we did it, our Capture the Flag contest was so big and so rad that DEF CON awarded to the winners of that contest a black badge.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
And so for us, that was like such a cool moment to be like, we like built this thing that previously didn't exist. And and myself, my business partner, the people who work for us at ISE, we all share this belief in quality, right? Like how you do anything is how you do everything, and like just do it the right way. And that was true when we were wanting to build this village. We were like, if we're going to do it, we're not just going to like, put some tables in a room. We're going to like have the ambient music. We're going to have cool lighting. We want to set like a vibe where people want to like come and like sit in that vibe. And in your sense, like the rules about what we can or can't do around that has shifted. In some years, there's like no ambiance. Some years it's the ambiance we originally set out with. But that first year, in those first early years, it was like, is this a club? Is this a nightclub? Like, I want to be in this space. I never want to leave. Yeah. And for us to see that commitment to a quality experience manifest in someone else getting this like incredible, like career and life-changing achievement.
Yeah.
We were like,
lifelong. Yeah.
Lifelong.
Sure.
I mean, that's a massive impact on the community.
It was
because,
and we've since done it 3 more times. So IoT Village in the 10 years of existence, this is our 10th anniversary. Don't tell anyone at the convention center, but somehow we're getting a cake and we're going to blow out candles.
Nice.
And in those 10 years, 4 times someone has won a black badge out of our contest.
Wow.
And that's like,
wow. And that's a lot for just 10 years. Most villages don't get a black badge that often, do they?
that's like Tom Brady numbers right there.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. Hall of Fame for sure.
Absolutely,
just on the village.
Self-bestowing.
Yeah, that's legit.
Okay. That's all right.
We happen to know a couple of black badge winners and had one on the show last season.
Amazing.
She won the social engineering village, And it's just cool to be able to talk to them and hear their story and kind of understand, how even they were shocked by what it took to win the badge. And a lot of that stuff, especially with the social engineering, you have to get a little bit lucky too. You have to be good, but you have to get lucky. And just hearing the stories are really cool. We've heard a couple other folks from social engineering. They got close, but they didn't win a black badge, but they are very good social engineers. So it's pretty cool. I'm shocked though, in 10 years, you guys have given away 4. That's very rare.
Yeah.
Very rare.
I mean,
we're pretty
means
proud
you
of
guys
it.
are doing something right. Right? It means you guys are doing something right. So just keep doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the way we think about, I mean, that's a cool accolade, but even if we didn't have that like attached to what we're doing, I think the ethos and the operating mantra would still be the same, which is like I was talking about before, like just do quality work. Like, and to me, this is one of the things that really actually chafes me about what's happening with the way security is viewed today. And I mean, how often is it, I don't know if you've experienced this yourselves, but we experience it every day, where you're talking to some company and they're like, yeah, we want, we have this mandate, like security is important. We're going to spend some money on this, blah, blah, blah. And here's what we want. We want this, 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 and this. And then we're describing, okay, here's how we will deliver that. And they're like, amazing. And then you say the price.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, but someone gave us a quote that's like 10% of that, not 10% less, 10% of, like 90% less. And we're like, it's obviously not the same. Like what you're asked for is going to cost that. Like the effort is the effort.
Yeah.
But there's so many approaches out there that are happy to just be like, we just won't try that hard and we're going to give you a thing and you're going to feel like you got the thing. And the person who buys that doesn't know the difference. And but we've been able to build our businesses on that principle of do quality work. And like, you're going to lose a lot of work because you're more expensive because you're doing quality work. But there's enough people out there who care about quality that, and is in fact central to the mission of what security is about. Like, you got to stick with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I played a role. I was a VCISO for several years and face exactly what you're talking about, because my approach to being a VCISO was exactly that, was to do the job and do the job the right way. Because if you're not, then you're doing a disservice to the people that you're trying to do the job for.
Yeah.
That is the purpose of your job, is to help people stay safe and secure. And if they don't know that they have risk, or if they don't know that they have flaws in their environment, help guide them to what those things are and how they should resolve them. That's the purpose. And if you're not doing that, then you're doing them a disservice. If all you're doing is playing a role to make some money and give them a document that says, you look good, then you're not doing your job. And so that used to frustrate me when I'm working with other technical engineers who are clearly snowballing the rest of the group because they just want to get by. And I call them out on all this stuff, and I force them to do the work, and I force them to come back around to the point where they would basically come back and say, okay, but in order to resolve that, I got to do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, exactly. You do.
Yeah.
So let's get on doing that.
It requires work. I think people wish, first of all, I think people wish security wasn't their problem. And that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. There's plenty of problems that I have in my life where I'm like, I wish that wasn't my problem, but you know what? It is my problem. So, but once they get past that, and then they're like, I wish that wasn't my problem. Then they're like, okay, it's my problem. I'm going to deal with it. What's the best way to do this? And what's difficult about that is that then what they are fed, what they're told, like all the conversation around that is like, it's so chaotic. It's so confusing. I'm trying to think of like a reverse. Like if I was going to go ask someone's expertise in an area that I was not an expert in, I just had like the tub in I had it reglazed. I didn't actually realize you paint a tub. Like I thought a tub, I thought it's just ceramic. And then you like, so that just goes to show, I don't know. But if I had researched this, I am certain I would have found a whole bunch of information that would have been like, I don't know anything about viscosity of just make it work. And I think that's how a lot of people feel about security. And so our job, and I think that's why shows like what you guys are doing are important. That's why I want to appear on shows like this, is our job is to try to like make it easier to understand and to simplify it and to evangelize and use stories to help convey this. I don't think anyone in security needs to be convinced that like this is important, but it's like, okay, well then what do we do with that understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, I want to take it a little bit deeper and go a little different direction, explore more about your background. So tell us a little bit more about your journey from ethical hacker to author and thought leader.
Yeah, so my first book, Hackable, how I came to wanting to write that was, I mentioned that I, along with a business partner, run this company of ethical hackers called Independent Security Evaluators. And we're, for that type of boutique organization, we're, somewhat larger than most. Many companies like this are like, 3 or 4 people, and we're like a actual operation. And what's been cool about that is we get to work with so many like cool companies who are solving cool problems through technology. And then they, at some point, they run into a security challenge. And I started to notice over the years of doing this that it seemed like everyone had the same problems. Now, they wouldn't state them as the same thing, and company A and company B, they probably wouldn't even agree that they think they have the same problem as each other. But you really could distill it down that all these companies that kind of struggle with similar things, and those things they struggled with was irrespective of the size of the company, the geographic location, the sector they focused on, the maturity of the organization. They all struggle with these things that have to do with things like, how do you share information? Why do you share information? How do you vet and hire security testing partners? How do you understand your security vulnerabilities? And how do you prioritize fixing them? And just thinking about all these different concepts that a lot of organizations really, really struggle with. And I thought that was really interesting when I started noticing that it's like, everyone has the same problem. And then I started thinking about, well, how do you solve those problems that everyone has? And that was the lightning bolt moment that was like, okay, you have to write a book. Because I started looking at it and I'm like, everyone has these same problems. What's the conventional solution? And then I started realizing the way that most people talk about the conventional solution to these problems was wrong. I'm like, people are out there advocating for the wrong way to solve these problems that everyone has. And I was like, I can't stand for that anymore now that I know that problem exists. So
I got to fix this now.
I got to fix this. And a book seemed like a good way to do it. Also seemed like a good way to really sharpen, like, do I actually understand the problem? Do I actually understand the solution? A book is great to do that. Like you sit down to write a book and you outline it in like 30 minutes. You write the first draft in like maybe 2-3 months. And then you take like 2 years editing it.
Yeah.
Because you're like sharpening and sharpening and sharpening and sharpening. I think of it as like, sandpaper comes in different grits. And you're like, this is the smoothest it could possibly get. And then there's a smoother grit. And you're like, well, now we'll sand with this one. And you keep sanding and keep sanding. And eventually you have this like beautiful polished thing at the end. But that was the motivator, was I wanted to solve those problems. I wanted to address and correct those misconceptions that my clients face, that our prospective clients face. Even people who were prospective clients and chose to hire someone else. I was like, I still want you to solve that problem. Like, here's a book. Use this. You don't ever have to talk to me again. And so I set out to do that. And it was cool because then I could write all these stories from, lived or observed experience. Like, what do our customers run into? What are real stories? Like, not naming names, obviously. And it went great. I mean, the book, I think we were onto something. It hit #1 bestseller in I think 9 different categories. And it got me, I was already doing a lot of speaking and just beginning to do keynote speaking. And then all of a sudden it was like rocket ship. And now it's like keynotes are coming out, more than I even have the capacity to go travel to do. And so then after that, a really amazing opportunity came up, which was I got an opportunity to give a TED Talk. And that was a life goal of mine. Always wanted to give a TED Talk. Always so excited to do that. Yeah. I can tell that story as well, and then how that led to my next book. But if there are questions that you wanted to know about specifically Hackable, then we can dig in that. I won't move us on that past that subject yet.
Well, I think that's a great segue because, I'm listening to your story, and your story kind of reminds me of another good friend of ours. And I think you know him too, Philip Wiley.
I just talked to Philip earlier today, actually.
Philip's a great dude. We love Philip. And it sounds a very similar path that you guys took with ultimately writing the books and then doing all the keynotes. And I think he's got that similar problem. Dude is invited to keynote so many things, he can't even do them all anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's done a TED Talk, though. I'm sure that's on his bucket list. At some point, he'll probably do one. Yeah. He probably will. But I guess while we're on that subject of TED Talk, I'm kind of curious, how does somebody even begin to prepare for something mentally that is considered like the creme de la creme of speaking engagements? Mm-hmm. And what did you learn from that process? And would you do anything different?
Yeah, those are really, really great questions. So this has been like a bucket list item for me for basically my whole professional life. I was like, someday I'm gonna give a TED Talk. And
sure.
And I realized that there is an idea here within ethical hacking, and so it's just sharpening like what would that be. And then when Hackable came out and it did all those great things that I mentioned, which I actually didn't even mention the best thing, which was people coming up to me either online or in person, meeting after conferences and being like, this book helped me solve this problem that I have. Like it's like, wow, that's so worth it. Some person I've never met before, I helped them solve their problem. Amazing. And when I started talking to TEDx Frankfurt about this, it was actually this kind of funny thing happened where they were like, all right, you're going to come speak in, I think it was whatever it was, like in October next year, whatever the time frame was, you're going to come out. And one of the things that the organizers of these events do is they hook you up with a coach to help you sharpen your idea, because they want the talks on their stage to be the best possible talk. And so that person helps you sharpen it or whatever. And the fact that I had a book means that, like, with the sandpaper metaphor, I'd already obviously sharpened the idea, softened the idea to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But this funny thing happened. So, it's in Germany is where this is happening. And my instructor, she was American, but there's something German. I don't remember what the distinct, maybe she's German born and lived, but whatever it was, her demeanor was very German. And Germans are very direct. They don't beat around the bush. And so I sit down with her and she says, okay, so explain to me the idea. So I tell her the idea. And it's all, it's like, oh, this is how we build better, more secure software systems. And, software runs the world and blah, blah, blah. All the stuff that, like, those of us in the hacker community, like, tell ourselves when we're looking in the mirror. And she looks me dead in the eye after I tell her this. I was like, and I have a book about it. It's a bestseller, all this stuff. And she looks me dead in the eye. She goes, no, we won't do that. And I'm like kind of bewildered. I'm like, isn't this literally the idea that you asked me to, like, isn't this why I'm going to be on this stage? And I'm glad that she did that, because her point was that a TED Talk needs to be useful to a general audience. It needs to be useful to everyone. And that idea is only useful to people who are close to security. Yeah. And I did know that wasn't like news, but I thought that's what they wanted. And so I started thinking about that and was like, all right, well, what is the seed in here that's useful to everyone? And after a lot of, like, going back and forth and thinking about that, and I was really grappling with different things. And this coach did a great job. She was really, like, beating me up on how I was, like, thinking about it. I remember this one night I'd, like, gone out to some bars with some friends or whatever, and I'm like lying in bed having like the terrible night's sleep that you have when you're, have a few drinks in you. And I literally like in a movie, literally like sit up in bed. And I was like, why you need to think like a hacker? It was literally like that. Like, it was like a moment of inspiration. I was like, the hacker mindset, that's the thing that is universal, like a new way of thinking. That's why people watch TED Talks. They want to understand an idea maybe differently. How can they apply it to their lives? And so that was understood to be, a worthy idea. And so we went and we sharpened that. To your question of the two parts, like how did I prepare for it? And then what would I have done differently? There's some things that I think are interesting about those questions. So preparing for it was just like, once you get your idea, you now have to, you want it to be flawless, right? This is like, a lot of people are going to see this at some point. I mean, my video is like over 30,000 views already, which on YouTube, the average views was like 4. It's like a lot of people have seen this and will continue to see this thing.
Yeah.
And so I just rehearsed it all the time, like everywhere that I could, including like unusual places. Like this funny thing happened a few days before the event, and I went out like a week early to acclimate to time zones and everything. And so I'm just like living in a hotel, just like living this nice European lifestyle for a week while I'm preparing for this thing. I go down to the gym to exercise, and I look around, like, there's no one in the gym right now. So I'm on the elliptical, and I'm like, might as well rehearse. So I'm like, pumping away on this thing. Endorphins are flowing. I'm at full max volume rehearsing this thing. And then all of a sudden I hear the door click because someone actually was in the gym. I just hadn't seen them. And imagine that. They're like exercise. They're doing whatever they're doing. And they're like, is this guy giving a literal TED Talk right now to himself?
That's awesome.
But it's because of that, repetition and rehearsal and everything that I got up on stage. And TED Talks, they're not live, they're recorded and then they're edited afterwards. So in the event that if someone like stumbles or they misstate it, you have the opportunity to stop, kind of reset and begin again if you want. Not that many people do that, but that is an option. But me, I was like, I'm just we talked about quality orientation earlier. And I was like, I want this to literally be without a flaw. I want no ums, no ahs, no misspoken words, no stumbling. And that's pretty hard on a memorized talk that's almost 18 minutes long with no slides.
Very hard.
In front of a live audience about something that is really, really important. And I have this really vivid memory of being on that stage, and the talk basically has like an intro, three points, and then a conclusion. And as I finished the third main point and I was beginning the conclusion, I remember thinking, I'm on the downhill now. Like, I have gotten this far, not a single error yet. And I was able to finish the whole talk without a speaking error. And it's like, no one knows, and no one honestly would care, but I cared. And so to me, that was like all the preparation and the rehearsal that had gone into that, delivered that. I think the only thing that I would have done differently, I wouldn't have gone back. I mean, like, I wish I'd changed X, Y, or Z. But if I think about like a future TED Talk, which maybe there's another one in me, I think I would want to use more humor. Like there were funny moments in my talk, but just like story selection, telling ones that are, I told one about how you could like kill patients, which is like total buzzkill. And there is a funny moment there though, when I'm telling there's several like moments of levity in the talk. And one of them, so I'm mic'd, but the audience is not mic'd. And so I tell this joke and everyone laughs at it, which is like, this room full of primarily Germans is not like prone to laughter. So them laughing was like, that was like a big win. So I get them, they're all laughing. And then I'm laughing at them laughing, but you can't hear them laughing. So I tell a joke, wait, and then laugh. And you think I'm just like laughing at myself because I think this is a funny joke that I just told.
That's great.
That's
but
funny.
yeah, moments of levity, I think, make stories like really, I mean, stories are engaging just period, but especially if they can be funny. And that's something that I've been continuing to hone in my craft and continue to improve, is like, how can I be funny. And like, it's hard to be funny, especially when we're talking about security, when it's like
security. Yeah.
What's funny about a company
Well,
getting hacked and losing money and people getting fired? Like, it's not
Right.
actually a funny topic. So
Well, and
Right.
even doing that in a different culture, right? In Germany, and
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to say things that'll land with the audience based on the cultural influence that audience has. It's a lot easier to do it here, right? If you was doing that, because this is where we communicate all the time.
Yeah.
But when you go to a different country and you have to try to do that same thing, it's even more challenging to try to do that.
Yeah, so I thought about that challenge as I was preparing. The question crossed my mind, like, okay, it's going to be a primarily German and almost exclusively European audience at this event.
Yeah.
What are the norms that they might have that I should be thinking about? And then as I was asking myself that question and ultimately asked my my coach that question, it went back to why I changed the idea in the first place anyway, which was none of that matters. You need an idea that's universal. This shouldn't be an idea that Germans appreciate or Europeans appreciate or Americans appreciate.
Right.
It should be useful to anyone. And I think the idea of like a new way of looking at a problem and what I talked about was not about computers at all, right? It was about like, how can you approach any situation and use the hacker mindset to find a new way to navigate change or accomplish a goal? And the hacker mindset, I think, is a superpower. And it has nothing to do with computers. And so once you extract it to that level, then it's not like, here's how it resonates with a local culture. But your question's spot on. I went through that same thought process myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the TED Talk came after the book. And so a little bit of the TED Talk was based on some of the conceptual ideas in the book.
Yeah, because what I was doing with Hackable was advocating for this idea that to build better, more secure systems, you need to think like a hacker. And hackers aren't good or bad, right? Hackers are they're problem solvers. They're non-conforming, curious, committed, creative problem solvers. But there are good hackers and there are bad hackers. The difference, of course, has to do with their motivation. Like the bad hackers will victimize in order to gain. And the good hackers, like people from the corner of the world that ethical hackers come from, good hackers will not victimize. And if you have victimized, you're probably not an ethical hacker. It's like kind
probably not.
Probably that cut and dry. Like this idea of gray hat, like black hat is a bad type of hacker and white hat's a good hacker. And people are like, and then there's gray hat because you're like a little good and you're a little bad. I'm like, you're not like a little bit of a criminal. You're not a little bit of a murderer. You're not a little bit of a sociopath. Like you're good or you're bad. And it's like, there's no gray.
Right.
Yeah.
So
let's take this a little bit deeper and let's transition from talking about the TED Talk and let's talk more about Ted as the author. So going into your journey with Hackable and the evolution of the inner hacker, what would you say would be like one of your biggest lessons that companies still haven't learned about application security or just security?
There's a few, I think. I already addressed one of them for sure, which is this idea that there's a cheap way to do it. And there are cheap ways, but there truly is no shortcut to security. Shortcuts are good. Shortcuts are actually a really good thing. Like, and this is one of the things I write about my new book, that like the hacker mindset helps you identify shortcuts. Like, why go the bloated bureaucratic way of doing something when there's a more efficient way? That's what a shortcut's supposed to be. But some things you can't bypass effort. Like if you want to build muscle, you can't not go to the gym. Now, some people might say, well, what about steroids? Steroids are a shortcut, but actually steroids, they do the opposite of making you healthier and more fit. They actually cause organ damage, mental health issues, all kinds of problems that are way, way worse than the musculature gains that you're going to get. So people sometimes miss the idea of effort. Like there's just no way around it that security requires effort, and effort $$ $. So like when we look at companies get this wrong all the time, where they look at a budget and the budget is somewhat like arbitrary. It's a number that someone made up because it feels good and for some reason. And then they evaluate the options of what they're trying to do. And then the budget is further influenced by the cheap options that are available to do something that are like kind of scratching the surface of that thing. And they make this like strange cost justified decision. But all that's happening when we make these decisions to like cheap out on security, to like do the thing that's 90% less expensive than the thing that is what you asked for, all you're doing is reducing or eliminating effort. And why this matters is we have to realize like what is an attacker? An attacker is committed. An attacker is going to look at a company and say, that's my target, I'm getting in there.
Yeah.
And when the company says, well, I'm just going to reduce my spending, what they're really saying is, I'm just going to try less. And that's against an opponent who's going to try really hard. So think of any sports team. If you were like, all right, guys, budgets are tight this year. We have some cost cutting. So we're going to practice 1 day a week. And tomorrow or next month or pick a period of time, we're going to go play a professional team. Literally the professionals in our sport. And we're going to practice 1 day a week.
Yeah.
0% of the time will you win. Because you're just not putting in the appropriate effort against a committed opponent.
Because of budgets, I'm going to cut your best players too, because we got to save some money.
Yeah.
So compete with that,
like Dallas does every year.
Yeah, exactly. Like my Dallas Cowboys do me every year. Oh, don't get me started on that. Well, I think we've got a lot to get into here tonight. Let's take a really quick break, and we're going to come back and get into what it takes to be a creative thought leader, and get into some creative writing thoughts too.
Love it. Let's do it.
Cool.
Alacrinet is a value-added reseller that provides cybersecurity-specific security solutions, services, and staffing. We are an agnostic security partner, which allows us to present multiple options for each security need. Our catalog of services encompasses a range of security solutions, penetration tests, and staffing options. With our approach, we can bring the best options and price points forward to increase your security posture and prevent vulnerabilities. Alacrinet is constantly adding new partners to meet the challenges of an ever-changing security landscape. As security experts, we know how to find security talent. Our entire organization is focused on cybersecurity, from leadership to sales team to technical staff and hiring staff. For more information on our vast list of solutions or services, please give us a call or visit our website at www.alacrinet.com. We look forward to growing with your business.
Welcome back. We are back from our break now, back with Ted Harrington, and we're talking about some really cool stuff that Ted's experienced, including the TED Talk. And so one of the questions that I've kind of had that I wanted to ask you, Ted, is I also know, in addition to being an author and a TED Talk speaker and a keynote speaker, that you're also a podcaster. And it's obvious, you're polished, you're good at these interviews, and we can tell you're kind of seasoned at this. But none of these things are really easy to do. So I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, of those three things, authoring, writing books, editing books, all the things that go into producing a book, the podcasting world, and then of course, public speaking, which one do you find was the biggest challenge for you, the hardest in general?
It would be speaking or writing. While I find podcasting to be very, very difficult, it didn't scare me. And those other two really scared me.
Yeah.
I mean, not like in a mortal way. I wasn't like,
Yeah.
I might die, but in what maybe feels mortal, like imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
You know, the fear of doing a bad job, the fear of like looking like an idiot. It's hard for me to say right now which maybe had more potent levels of fear. But one thing that's interesting about writing is that is permanent.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you write a book. These thoughts were going through my mind as I'm writing it. I'm like, you write this book, you argue a point of view, and you're wrong. Well, that exists forever in the history of humanity.
Right. Remember the guy who said this?
And that is the reason I would never do that. My number one critic would just destroy me before the book could ever be published, and it's my wife. She would read that and was like, that sounds stupid. Why are you doing that? I mean, you need to rewrite that and make it make sense. No,
well, would you write a book in this scenario? This is how you solve that. Is the book that you'd be writing for your wife, or who the archetype is that your wife represents?
Oh yeah, I mean, it absolutely would not be for her. But
so then you shouldn't take her advice.
But I couldn't separate the two. Is my problem. I couldn't say my wife is a perfectionist in everything studious. And I mean, this is a woman, she has a PhD, right? And this is a woman who has never in her life made a grade lower than an A in her entire educational career. And so the understanding of not doing well at something like this, especially literature, not doing well with it would be like,
she would destroy
a feeling of extreme disaster. Like I just could not sum this up to the level of acceptance from a literature standpoint. So I just wouldn't do it.
Well, first of all, don't show her the clip where I said don't listen to her. That seems like
we'll edit that out.
Bad for both of us.
We'll just edit that
out. My point wasn't don't listen to your wife. My point was this is a common thing, right? Where people want to write a book or come up with some sort of idea. And what do? We turn to the people that we love and we trust to say, what do you think of this? Mm-hmm. But those people aren't the people we're doing this for.
Right.
And those people who we love and trust, they want to be useful. They want to be helpful. And so what winds up coming back is this like random collection of feedback that isn't necessarily helpful. Now, in your case, you probably are married to the right person to help you with the book. And I would argue the fact that she's going to be such a perfectionist is what would ensure that you write a good book.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I could agree.
As long as you commit to doing it, you almost couldn't fail. But yeah, a lot of times people, they're like, you know, they go to their college roommate or something, and that might be a wonderful person. That person might be super successful in their career, but you're writing a book for a totally different archetype. It's not really the right person to ask for that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's an important point for our listeners and viewers to gravitate to and take some time to really listen to and understand, is that the audience that you're trying to reach is where you're trying to identify all of the words that you're trying to put and express within your book. You have a purpose, you have a focus, you have an audience, a group, a dynamic that you're trying to address. Not everyone's going to fit into that. And you may get feedback from people who are in your purview that don't fit into that focus group that you're trying to reach. And their thoughts or comments you have to weight them because they just may not be within the target audience of what you're trying to reach. And so you have to weight that a little bit. And that's okay. I mean, saying that's okay is one thing. Really believing that's okay, that's something else. But that's the reason why that statement was really important. And thank you for sharing that. I think that was an important statement.
Yeah. And so either all these scenarios, what we're talking about, it's kind of interesting. So the original question was like, which was hardest? And I didn't even like directly answer. I just started talking about stuff that scares me, you know, or did scare me. And that certainly, you know, touched a button for you as well. And it's like, we're humans, right? And we have these fears, and fear is the thing that prevents people from achieving things.
Right.
And what we need to do is we need to be able to get comfortable with fear, obviously in like a, safe way. I'm not suggesting like, go drive your car 150 miles an hour with no seatbelt on, because that's a scary thing to do. But like, thinking about, well, writing this book might be scary. Submitting something to my wife who is going to critique it, that might be scary. Like we should do these scary things because it's the fear of them that's usually the fear of the fear is usually the problem. It's not the actual the outcome's not likely to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's this exercise that I learned when I was writing Hackable, and I thought it was so powerful. I actually included the exercise in my next book because I think fear is such an important blocker that we need to bypass.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of fear canceling. The publisher of my first book taught me about this. I was a first-time author, and they realized, like, hey, first-time authors, oftentimes their fear gets in the way of them finishing. Like, you might put all the effort in. I know a lot of authors who have great stories to tell, and they have manuscripts, and years later, they're still, like, working on something. It's like, that thing doesn't need to be worked on. It's the fear that's holding you up from, 5 years later, still editing that thing.
Interesting.
And so fear canceling helps you think about, answer a few questions, basically, like, what is the fear? Like, what do you fear is going to happen? How likely is that to come true? If it does come true, what is the impact that has? And then finally, what can you do to minimize the likelihood of that happening? And when you sit down and you write the answers to those questions, so like for me, I had a fear that I was going to write a bad book. I was going to, put all this effort in. The book was going to be bad. I was going to be embarrassed. I was going to look like an idiot. I just didn't want any of those things to be true. And so that was a fear. So I named the fear. And then I said, how likely is that to become true? And I was like, I don't know, like medium. And then, well, what's the impact if that does come true? And I said, well, best case scenario, it's like embarrassing. And worst case scenario, maybe it torpedoes my credibility, my professional credibility. And then the pivotal moment was then once I'd done all those, then I wrote the answer to the fourth column, which is, well, what can you do? What actions can you take in order to minimize the likelihood of that happening? And the fear was write a bad book. So I'm like, well, write a good book.
Yeah.
And I kind of laughed at myself when I wrote it down because it was like almost seemed like pithy. But then I realized like, oh, well, wait a minute. I now have an action plan. I don't yet know how to do that, but I know what the neutralizing factor to my fear is. Write a good book. So now the conversation isn't, should I write this? Should I not write it? It was now, how do you write a good book? What are the components of what makes a book good?
Right.
And go do those things. And that is actionable. That's tangible. I'll leave it to my readers to determine whether I actually wrote a good book, but I know for sure I did not write a bad book.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's gold right there. That is gold. I have an interesting question for you. Often when we have someone on the show who's done something like this, written a great book, has a phenomenal podcast, is a great speaker and does a speaking tour, we try to get into what their creative process is. We had Jack Reichsider on the show once, and we asked him that question, like, what do you do when you start to think about your next Darknet Diaries episode? How do you come up with the content that you want to put into that episode?
Yeah,
and
that's a good question.
And so what is yours? What's your process? How do you decide, like, this is good, this isn't, or I'm comfortable with this route? Like, what does that look like?
What I've arrived at, so the answer might be slightly different if you're talking about writing a book versus, giving a keynote, but I can talk about there's a significant overlap between the two, and I can talk about that. And for me, that has to do with storytelling, right? So like, how do you, what makes a story good and worth telling? And so I have this sort of like analytical or engineering brain of how I can think about like structuring a talk. And so I mentioned like a TED Talk as example. It was like, you only have 18 minutes, actually 15 minutes in my case. I kept mine a little bit shorter. And so it's like, Section 1, introduce the thesis. Then 1, 2, 3, 3 points, 3 stories to support the thesis, and then wrap it all together with a conclusion that summarizes the call to action. So it's like 5 components, but like 3 meet with 2, an opener and a closer.
With bookends.
So I could think about it that way. So like, okay, that's a really good structure for any talk. And so most of my talks fit that format, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like introduce the thesis, tell some stories that support the point, that combine to prove the thesis, and then the conclusion of it is telling people what to now do as a result of this thesis defense, basically. And so then once you have those components, then I think about the stories, because I could give a 45-minute keynote. I could give you the message of the keynote in about 4 seconds, right? It's like, think like a hacker. And to think like a hacker, you need to be nonconforming. And nonconformity requires you to challenge assumptions, ask what if, and break the rules.
Yeah.
How does Ted talk about that for 45 minutes? Well, what I do is I tell stories that illustrate all of the components to that thesis.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is that makes the points very relatable. People can engage with it. They're memorable. Stories, just even bad stories, are memorable. Obviously, you want to tell stories that are good. And so for me, the question, like years ago when I started speaking, was, how do I tell stories? Because at the time it was like, well, let's give some data and then that should support the argument. And it's like, no, stories are what you need. So then I started thinking about, how do you become a good storyteller? What makes a story good? I went through a whole journey of learning how to tell stories. I read all kinds of books about storytelling, and that's kind of fascinating, because then you start to see like most movies follow the same format of like, there's archetypes. Like a good example is in Star Wars. Luke represents this very common archetype that is the reluctant hero. Like they don't come in as the hero. They're like, no, it's not for me, not for me, not for me. And then circumstances force them into action.
Right.
Another example of a common character archetype is the guide. So like Yoda guides Luke on his journey to like go become the hero.
Yeah.
Obviously you have the villain, Darth Vader, so on and so on and so forth. And so then at first I started thinking about like literally following those story structures. And I was like, these stories are terrible. Like I'm like trying to invent a villain in a story. I'm telling about how I one time hid beer in snow from my parents. Like what's happening? What am I talking about? And so what I started then doing was I realized like the stories I was telling on stage, I didn't think were fun. I wasn't even interested. I'm telling a story and I'm like, this isn't very cool, but I'm going to tell it. How's the audience going to feel about that?
Yeah.
You know? And, but then I would like get off the stage and I'd go in whatever city I was in. I'd have some friend and I'd go out to dinner with that friend. And then we just start like, chewing the fat and joking around. And all of a sudden I'd be telling stories to this friend. And I noticed they were like leaned in and they were like kind of engaged with the story I'm telling. I was like, maybe I should be doing this.
Yeah.
Like I just do this.
Yeah.
And so over the years, what I've been trying to do now, and it's still a work in progress and probably will for the rest of my life be a work in progress. I've been trying to envision myself as I'm standing on a stage, not speaking to the idea of an audience, but speaking to a friend of mine in a darkly lit cocktail bar. How would I tell this story in that context? Like what words would I emphasize? What details in this would I tell? Like, and that had this really powerful effect on me because then I started, like my body language started being different. Because before that I was like, I am an orator orating. And it's like, no one talks like that,
Yeah.
And now I get up there and I say stuff like stuff I'm telling you guys. Like, this is the way like if we were having a drink right now, this is the conversation we'd be having. Yeah. And this is what I try to do on stage too. And so for me, the creative process, then now that I've figured out like the packaging and like what I'm trying to put in the package, then it's simply a matter of observing and cataloging stories. So I find myself all the time being like, I'll hear a news story and I'll be like, could I tell that in an interesting way? Right. Or I'll see people on our team do something. Or even like I find times where I'll be telling a story. Like I just had my college reunion and I met up with a bunch of my college buddies and I start telling this story. And I was like, this isn't a security story at all, but can I illustrate a security message with this story?
Yeah.
Right.
And so I start thinking about that. And so I find inspiration for these stories all over the place. And then you try them, and some I get up there and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm the only one who thought that was funny. and you know, you move on to another one, or maybe you're like, I'm on to something, but I need to like refine this, or the punchline doesn't hit right. People don't get what I'm trying to illustrate. And so it's a work in progress. But that's for me, that's my process, is just observing interesting things that are happening, thinking about the audience and like, what is something that would be useful to them? Like, what's a message if I was them, that I would want to receive? And then how do I take that message? It's kind of like, you know, people, when they want their dogs to like eat medicine and they'll like like stick the pill in a piece of cheese. I'm like, what's the piece of cheese that I should stick this pill in? Because they want the pill, but they kind of don't want the pill. But let's like, how do I wrap this all so they're gonna like very excitedly?
They want the cheese, they just don't want the pill. So I gotta disguise the pill with the cheese. Yeah,
and then there's once they have the pill, they're like, I'm really glad I have the pill.
Yeah.
So thank you. I enjoyed the cheese. The pill is making my life better.
Wrapped in cheese. Yeah.
So that's interesting when you're saying that. What it reminded me of was an approach that we're trying out at a live podcast that we're doing on stage on Friday. And in this approach, we have two guests, but one of the guests we're bringing on is an AI tool that I built. And the interesting thing about that tool is that it's doing some of the same things that you were just referring to. It's identifying with the audience because we've given it a profile, an identity, and an accent that the audience would recognize and understand. So it has a really good Jersey accent. It understands and delivers the content, which is a very complex content, in very easy to understand terms, and gives story examples behind it.
In
so
a humorous
it
way.
in a humorous way. So it helps the audience identify with this complex story in a way, or this complex topic in a way that they can align it with a story, right? That they can see visually, like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I get that. I see how that could work. So we'll see how it works out for us. But every time we've ran through this in rehearsals, it has been mind blowing. And I walk away feeling like I've actually learned something else that I didn't learn. Every rehearsal, I'm like, holy crap, I did not know that. That's pretty cool too.
Well, yeah, because that part of it is not rehearsed. It's completely coming from the training model it's using to provide the answer. So if you ask it a different question, you don't know what you're going to get. You can ask it the same question 3 times in a row and get a different answer that tells the same story and gets you to the end game, but it's going to tell it in a different humorous way each time. So when you were talking about fine tuning, it's almost like the exact same method that a comedian would go through to fine tune their jokes and their act and their run sheet. Yeah. You know, hey, that joke worked. This one didn't. I'm going to fine tune this. Oh, that almost hit. We're almost there. I can feel it. I just need a little more punch to the way I close that one out. That's pretty cool though. I like that concept.
Yeah, like comedians, they have this amazing thing where they can go to just like a local whatever comedy club, and like Dave Chappelle can show up and he can tell the worst unpolished jokes, but people will enjoy it because they're like, this is part of the craft. He's developing this thing. He's getting real feedback. Yeah. For speakers, I haven't really been able to find something that is equivalent. There's maybe the closest would be something like, there's a thing called Moth, where it's like a storytelling competition. So you can get up there and like tell one of your stories or something. Yeah. But the closest I've come to is like maybe each talk have an element that you're working on. And rather than just like to give this, maybe I have maybe one keynote topic in one particular area, and rather than just like the same thing, if I give it, 5 or 6 times over a period of time, it's like each time I'm playing around with different things. I'm trying to improve my own craft, trying to see what works, what doesn't. I'm swapping stories in and out. And because that's how you get better, is you just got to keep like trying and experimenting and pushing and self-assessing and all those things.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's jump back to the podcast for a minute. You know, your podcast, Tech Done Different, like the name. I'm curious, you know, with Jason and I, we always go through and in our off season, we try to look at what did we do right last season, and what can we improve on next season? What can we do better? I'm curious in your mind, what that looks like. And also if we were going to tell someone, hey, go check out Tech Done Different, but you only have time to look at one episode, what's the episode you would steer them to say, hey, this was a good episode, great guest, the discussion was just flowing the whole time? Which one would you point them to?
That's an easy one to answer. So we've aired a little over 100 episodes.
Wow.
Which, like,
impressive.
It got to a point where we're getting close to 100, and it was like, has it run its course?
Right.
It doesn't matter. We're doing 100.
Yeah.
We're like, you don't do 98 of something.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Got to hit 100.
And in those 100 plus a handful that never aired for, like, you know, technical reasons, or their PR team squashed it or whatever. There's one that really stands out to me, and it was with an artist who was one of the other speakers giving a TED Talk that same day in Frankfurt. And we stayed in touch. She lives in Hamburg, and she was coming to Venice, where I live, Venice in California. And I was like, well, when you're here, let's do an episode, because artists, I just would love your perspective. And the whole vibe of Tech Done Different was about this idea of, like, how do we think differently? And then within the realm of tech, right? So, like, tech is, you know, my core audience. So how do people think differently? So we're always trying to have guests on to be like, well, here's a norm, here's a convention, here's a usual way of thinking. How do we think about that differently? And it was great. Her name's Sabella, and having Sabella on, I want to say it was episode, like, probably in the 70s. I don't exactly know. But what made this one so special is that we did our entire show just like you guys. We did it virtually, except for 2 episodes. We did one episode that was a live episode at DEF CON. That was super, super cool. That was the other one that was kicking through my mind, is like maybe to mention.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And then this one with Sabella, where we went to a studio, and what made it so awesome was it was 2 people in a room and having, like, a real back and forth dialogue. And I think that is such a phenomenal way to run a show. I know it's difficult when, you know, your guests might be all over the place, but when I think about what would a future version of this or another show look like, trying to do that would be awesome.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, for sure.
So in person was one thing that I definitely learned out of it that makes episodes great. Another is one of the things that I think I stumbled on. There were a lot of things I stumbled on. Like, when you go from not doing something to starting it, you're like, those first maybe like 20 are rough as you're learning. I mean, even like basic stuff, like maybe this isn't basic, but fundamentals like mic technique, mic positioning, how you ask questions and stuff. And I remember there was one of the people who was on the team who produced it at one point, after like 20 something episodes, she sits me down, and we have a really good relationship, so she can say something like this to me. She's like, Ted, you need to change your face. and I was like, what do you mean I have to change my face? She's like, when you have a guest on and you're not interested in what the guest has to say, it is so obvious. Your face is like, I'm scowling. And
wow.
So she was right that I should figure that out. But the root problem wasn't that how do I pretend? It was, I invited on guests that I wasn't interested in. Because I thought the idea of the guests was interesting. Like, oh, it's this prominent title or this prominent company, or
right.
I met them somewhere and I thought they were cool. Like, but there were so many of them that got on, and it was just like they weren't that interested in being there. The stories weren't that fascinating. And I'm not disparaging the guests at all, because I was getting people who weren't like, I was seeking people out. This wasn't the like they hit me up.
Right.
And I think I really stumbled on guest selection in some cases. Some of my guests were phenomenal.
Yeah.
But the ones where I'm completely whiffed, it was like it was all right here. And
that's funny.
So thinking more about less about like the idea of a guest and more about like, that is a person I have heard say something that I find interesting. I think my audience would find interesting. I want to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
That makes a phenomenal episode.
Absolutely.
Well, as we kind of get to the tail end of this episode, let's talk a little bit about some things that I feel like might be good takeaways, right? So the question I have for you is, in your experience from the work that you've been doing with the companies you work with, what do you consider is still broken in how companies build software?
Too often, security is thought of as something you do after something is built. And that is a very ineffective, very expensive, and very difficult way to think about it.
Yep.
Security instead should be part of the design process. So when someone sits down to build something, they're saying, here's a business problem. We're going to solve that business problem. Then they go set out and they say, here's how we're going to solve that business problem. The tech is going to do bang, 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 bang. Like those are the requirements for the tech. We haven't built anything. We haven't designed anything. We just know it's going to satisfy these requirements. Security should be one of those things that's discussed there. Because then when you start designing it, now, like imagine yourself at a whiteboard and you draw like one circle, you draw the other circle, you draw a line between them. And now imagine the security person looks at that and they're like, but have you thought about how that's going to authenticate? And it's like, okay, good point. Wipe that off, erase that. And now it goes like this. And you're like, yeah, do that. And the difference between that first line and the second line is maybe like 1,000 person hours of effort.
Yeah.
That was different between the two.
Right.
Yeah.
And so companies all the time, they're going to go build that first version. It now is ready to release. And they're like, let's have someone evaluate its security. And that's when they're like, this straight line here, it really should be it should be a loopy line. And they're like, well, that's going to take, probably 6 to 9 months of effort. We got all these cycles. We can't do that. And it's like, you're going to have to do it. And now you're going to burn all this time. You're going to rebuild something you already built. And it was literally a whiteboard exercise if you just did it earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not more expensive to do that way. In fact, it's less expensive. This is one of the things I analyzed in Hackable. I was like, all right, if I say it's less expensive, let's actually put numbers to it. So I went and did all this research, found all these numbers to justify it's actually less expensive to think about security early in the process and is more effective. So it's a problem that needs to be solved. I think we're trying to solve it in the best way we can by doing what the three of us are doing right now, by talking about these things, by educating and advocating. But ultimately, there's going to be excited entrepreneurs who see a problem, they go to solve it, and they're going to get far down the road before they think about this question. So our job as security professionals is not to chastise them or embarrass them or make them feel stupid, but rather to say, okay, wherever you are today is the exact right moment to talk about security. Like the best moment would have been before, the second best moment is right now. And so any moment after now is way worse than right now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it now.
So pay us so we can help you fix it. Thank you.
And
Jason,
even what I'm advocating is I'm even saying pay me a lot less. Because like think about that whiteboard exercise, right? And they don't know like the straight line should actually be this squiggly line.
Yeah.
All right, well let's go hire ISE. Like Ted, bring your crew in. We come in, they're like, we're thinking this straight line, and we're like, do the squiggly. That was an hour. We're going to charge you an hour.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, here's a project that's going to cost you 200 hours.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, I want you to pay me less.
Yeah.
I would rather have more people getting it right and paying me less.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Reminds me of our CISSP episode, Jason. You know, security needs to be baked in, not bolted on. I mean, we said that, we probably said that 15 times throughout the course of our podcast, but it's true. I mean, if you're not considering it in the beginning, you're really just creating more heartache for yourself down the road and more man hours and more effort, ultimately more time, which is more money. And just 100%. Do it right the first time. I mean, we talked about doing things right earlier. I mean, it's true. There's something to be said for paying a little bit more upfront to do it right, to save the heartache later. But there's a lot of truth.
I had this, I can illustrate this with a metaphor. So I had, a few years ago, I built a table. I'm not like the guy who builds furniture. So like, I'm not trying to
a table.
That,
okay. I'm thinking database.
I one time, like to eat a table you would eat on. Okay. And I had this like vision in my mind what I wanted. I went to like an architectural salvage store and I got this like super cool like barn door. And then I sanded down all the rough edges. And then I went to Home Depot and I got these like super cool like pieces of extruded aluminum cut to size and turned them into legs. And it was this like one of a kind, amazing looking table. I needed to build it because like there were certain dimensions that they just don't make tables in the dimensions I needed. And I didn't want to have a table custom made. I wanted to make it myself. So I like make this table outside. And the thing's awesome. I'm like taking pictures of it. I'm so psyched about it. And then I go to bring the table inside and I realize it doesn't fit through the door.
Oh, shoot. That could be a problem.
So I had to like disassemble it, bring all the pieces inside where I should have built the thing in the first place, and then reassemble it, build this table. And as this thing was happening, I was like annoyed by this exercise. But it was a really vivid demonstration of this idea that like, had I paused to say like, what are my requirements? And one of the requirements was this thing needs to be able to go from its builds location to its placement location, like evaluate that before you build it. I would have flagged this as a problem and I would have changed where I built it and I would have saved myself all the time. I built the table twice. And
almost so I think that almost too simple, wasn't it? Almost. So it's like a goofy example, but the idea of like, if we just take a little bit of time to think about what we're doing first, right, we're going to save ourselves all the heartburn later. Or maybe not all. We're going to save ourselves a lot of heartburn later. Absolutely. Well, Ted, I want to take you in a little bit of a different direction here. Ask a question on ethical hacking. And it's a loaded question because of AI, and AI is everywhere nowadays. And with these tools that we're seeing that are coming out, I want to ask you, in your opinion, because you live in this world every day, how is the role of an ethical hacker changing, and how has it changed compared to being an ethical hacker 5 years ago, as opposed to if you're coming out of school and you're going to become an ethical hacker and you're going to start your career tomorrow? How are things changing for those folks?
They're changing in really positive ways. So one change is that it's now a very established profession. Maybe like 20 years ago, like I think of my business partner, Steve, he came out of the PhD program at Johns Hopkins. And at that time, like when he graduated from his PhD program, it wasn't really a job you could go get. Like you couldn't go like that. He started doing it on his own to like, and generating his own money doing that. But in the early days of this company we've been building together, it was really fascinating to me as we're hiring, hackers to work for us. A lot of times they were so excited because they're like, I was going to do this anyway. This is like what I do as my hobby. This is what I do on my free time. I can't believe this can be my job. I think today people now recognize that this is a job. There's entire companies, that do this. But prior it was maybe like a big box consulting firm, like one of the big four consulting firm. Maybe they would have like a person or two people maybe. And now it's like there's entire organizations like myself and peer companies like ours, like our company and companies like ours who hire hackers. And so that's a really good thing that there's like, it's a legitimate like job posting you can go find, and there's lots of them. and they're in demand.
Listeners that want to live in Venice Beach, California, and do ethical hacking, look up ISE, right? I mean, find
yes.
you and impress you guys so you can get the ultimate job on the West Coast. That'd be freaking awesome. Especially for a kid out of school.
This profession is the ultimate job. Yeah. And right out of school, like, and a lot of things that's really cool about this as a profession. A lot of the people who come work for us, they aren't necessarily security professionals, right? They might have a degree, some sort of science degree, like computer science or engineering or something like that. If they have that sort of engineering or technical capability and the aptitude for this, which entails like resourcefulness and commitment, curiosity, all those types of things, they can learn the security stuff. Mm-hmm. But if they lack those things, they won't. And so we all the time, we hire people who have never professionally been hackers before, but if they possess those other traits,
right,
and they learn it real fast.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
We've had that conversation before in some other episodes too on skill set hiring and their ability to, if you hire the right skill set, their ability to adapt into what you want them or need them to do will be a lot easier than most often, even sometimes someone who comes in with that skill set that may not have those same supporting traits. So I always try to find people that have the baseline traits that then would be able to enhance the job even further, right? Than just what I'm looking for. So question for you. Do you have any upcoming talks or conferences on the horizon that you'll be speaking at that you might want to guide our audience to checking you out at?
Yes, and it's a evolving list. I have some events that are run by Amazon Web Services coming up. I'm going to New York next week for that. We got some for HashiCorp, which is now an IBM company, doing some for some security product companies around Black Hat and DEF CON. A lot of events that would be associated with other larger conferences. But the big place people can come find me that's coming up soon would be at DEF CON. We'll be IoT Village. You heard me nerd out on it before. Hope to see you both there, and anyone listening to this. It'll be our 10th anniversary, and we're excited to celebrate.
Well, now that we know that you're going to be at the IoT Village, we'll definitely have to swing by there. We're definitely going to be walking through there. It's one of the places we usually frequent when we're out there. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
One more book question before we let you go, because we'd be remiss if we didn't ask. Is there any information yet on the release date or any pre-order information? If somebody was interested in getting the new book, how would they find out information on that?
Yes. So you would find that information in the same place you'd find information to how to contact me or watch any of the videos of all these things that I've been talking about. Information on my books, social media, all that stuff is all at tedharrington.com. There is a page in there. There's you go across, there's the navigation, and one of the is for books, and one drops you to Inner Hacker. And there's a wait list on there. So if you go find the Inner Hacker, it's tedharrington.com/inner-hacker. There is a wait list there, and everyone that's on that will be notified as soon as it becomes available, which right now is looking like it will be at some point in August, possibly early September. We should be able to announce the release date any moment in the next week or two. We're very, very close.
Yeah,
it's about to go into production, and we're getting excited.
Possibly a signed copy at the IoT Village if one comes out early. That would be pretty cool. I would love
that. Yeah,
very nice.
Very good.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, guys, I think we're into the end of this show. I do want to thank you, Ted, for joining us tonight. This has been a really good conversation.
Yeah.
Great to learn more about you and the behind the scenes process that you put into all that you do when you speak or write, or even, some of the nuggets you were able to give us about overcoming your fear, and challenging yourself, and, just even your process of being on stage was just fascinating to hear. So thank you for sharing that with us tonight. And Kevin, any parting words?
No, just if you're going to Hacker Summer Camp this year, swing by the IoT Village, say hello to Ted. There's going to be some cool stuff going on there. And are you guys doing the CTF this year as well?
I think so. I should ask my team this.
Yeah.
That is an answer I should know without hesitating.
Yeah.
And
Well, hey,
there you go.
If you are,
I'm in trouble now. Thank you guys. They're going to yell at me. Like, how do you not know
Ted,
this?
why did you do that? You should have known this.
Well,
You hyped this thing up for 2 hours and you didn't answer the one.
Let's just say this. Okay, listeners, there's probably going to be some sort of a CTF. Get out there and expect to find it, maybe even participate in it. And you just never know if that fifth black badge might just be lurking around the corner, just waiting for you to come give it a big old hug.
Yeah.
Ted, thanks for coming on, man. It's been great. We will see you in Vegas in a few weeks, and really appreciate your time tonight. We know you're a busy guy.
That's great. Well, thank you both. This has been great. And let's stay in touch.
Sounds great, good. Man. Take it easy.
All right.
Cheers, everybody.
See you guys later.
Thank you for watching our latest episode of the Cyber Distortion Podcast. We only grow with your support. The best thing you can do to help us grow is to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, follow us on X, and tell just one friend about the show. You can find out more about us on the blog site at www.cyberdistortion.com. Our X handle is @DistortionCyber, and you can also listen to our audio-only versions of the episodes on most major streaming podcast platforms. Just search for Cyber Distortion Podcast. Until next time, take care. Cheers.